and we've got a lot to get through in a short space of time. So, page 2 says, by the end of this little workshop, everybody on page 2, we're going to be able to work any room with increased self confidence. What do I mean by work the room? Good. So, be able to move around the room, connect with various people where? Anywhere. But when is it difficult for you? When is it easy and when is it difficult to move around the room? Hmm? Excellent. When you don't know people. So if you're going to a party or you're going to somewhere that your friends are there and you need to move around the room and network and so on, would you find that much easier than if you went somewhere where you didn't know anybody? I've, there's very few people, there's a few people who actually thrive in that environment, who can go to new places, go where they don't know anybody, and they actually enjoy it. Equally, there's a very few people who like to speak in public, who like to get up and talk. In fact, the book of lists say that one of the most feared things is, guess what? Public speaking. I don't think they mean that would you rather die or would you rather do a speech? But when people say, what do you fear most? At the top of the list comes public speaking. Does that make sense? And networking is similar to that. It's one of the things that people don't like doing. They don't like going into new environments or people they don't know and talking to people. So we want to be able to do a bit more of that. We want to avoid the three worst things to do to kill a conversation. Anybody ever killed a conversation? It seemed like it was going well. You talk to someone and all of a sudden it goes flat. Has that ever happened to you? So we want to find about that. We want to learn the sweetest word in the English language. And we want to learn how to build strong business relationships. So if you turn over, it says, we're going to talk about the benefits of networking. And we're going to do my party principle of networking. It's an acronym that reminds me of all the key things. The P is for planning. The A and the R is for attending and work in the room. The T is for target your network. Y is for working on yourself. And that gives us the party principle of networking. That's what we're going to work our way through. So first thing for you to do on page 4 is to do that little quiz. You don't have to think too much about it. So anyone finish that now? Number 6, at least. 8. Once you've done that, if you've got any ones or twos or areas that you think you want to work on, why don't you just put a circle around them and said, these are some of the areas that I might need to work on. Any ones, twos, threes. So you've got a little bit of a focus. Right. The first thing you're going to do then, it's a practical thing, is you're going to network. So I want you to get up and go and talk to somebody that you don't know. And there's quite a few people who are new to the church, so you can go and talk to somebody. Say, hi, my name is such and such. And this is why we network. I want you to just go and talk to someone very quickly, someone you don't know, and just tell them why we network. Go ahead very quickly. Join in the networking. If you talk to someone, go and have to go find one. Doesn't matter. Still good to find something. You can't stand here. You've got to go. It's going to get charged and talk to someone. Doesn't matter. Go on. Okay. Right. You can find one other person, but you haven't got as long. One other person very quickly. Why do you network? Find one other person. Okay, take your seats. Excellent. Take your seats. Okay. Anybody notice anything different in the atmosphere? Hmm? Lighter by what? By doing what? What do we do? Just talking. It just breaks the atmosphere, doesn't it? It changes what we're doing. So, what things did you get down for? Why do we network? Just throw some things at me and you can make notes for yourself. But what the ideas? Just throw ideas at me. Build relationships, good. Anything else? Make new contacts, excellent. Write these down. Helping each other, I like that. Excellent. Networking equals opportunities. Get these down. Any more? Was anybody a little bit uncomfortable? How many? Initially. So you can break out your comfort zone. Yeah. As I said, most people feel a little bit uncomfortable. So only a few weirdos like me will go out to places and enjoy, talk to people I don't know and challenging myself. But the more you do it, the more you get comfortable with it. Anything else? Not just perfecting the pitch, but it's kind of how I change my state. So I'm going to share that with you afterwards. There's a kind of mindset that I have when I go into these networks. Yeah, but that's good. Anything else? Good. Connecting. All of us need to connect. There's a few more things in there. I think there's a lot to do with research, finding out things. That's how we network. Raising your profile. That's going to be important. Um, Learning from others. Having fun. Actually, you can go out to network to have fun, to meet people. So, what actually is working then? What actually is it? Personal development. Some people said some stuff at the beginning which was right. What actually is it? Just simplify it. It is about helping people, which somebody said. It is about gaining trust and developing relationships. But if I simplified it, I say it's simply talking to people. That's all networking is. Simply talking to people. Can everybody talk? So if networking is simply talking to people, can we all network? And when we were talking about evangelism before, it's simply talking to people. Do you get that? So what I want you to, while I'm there, actually, before I turn over, I want you to just be clear about what networking isn't. What networking isn't. What isn't it? Because what do we think it is, but it's not that. Selling. Excellent. Most people think networking is about selling. It's absolutely not about selling. So I want you to put networking isn't selling and draw a circle around that so you can get that mindset change. Before we finish on this bit, when you go out to a business type event, there are some people have their business cards and they go around the whole place. If there's 30, 40 people in here, 30, 40 business cards will be given out. And they have lots of appointments and have lots of meetings. I'm not saying that's wrong because some people, that's how they network. Then there's other people who will just be with the person that they came to the event with. So if you go to an event, you've asked someone to come with you, and through the whole event, guess who you network with? The person you were with. Was that particularly good networking? But do you do that? I see you do it. I see you go to the event and just network with the person you're with. So at the one extreme, you're with the person you're with. The other extreme, you're with everybody. I think good networking is somewhere in the middle. Does that make sense? And depending on your character, so for example, my character, when I go out, I may talk to 2, 3, 4 people maximum and have long conversations. Whereas other people I know may speak to 10 people and have a little bit less conversation, but build more. Does that make sense? It depends on your character. There's no right or wrong. You have to decide what type of individual you are and take some of the concepts that I'm going to teach you and decide how you're going to do it. But don't go to the extreme of going with your buddy and staying with them all night. That's the wrong extreme. And the other one isn't, I don't want you just dashing out your business card, you don't even know anybody's name all over the place. It's not going to work for you. Does that make sense? So let's start with a little bit of a plan. So page 6. How many invitations should you accept? Anybody start to get invitations to different events or emails to different seminars and so on and so forth? Anybody starting to get stuff like that because you're on a database? And the more you get out there, the more those invitations are going to come, aren't they? How many do you think you should accept? Good. So check your diary, see what's relevant. Any other comments? See if you get 5, 10, 15 a week, what do you do? Mm-hmm. Yeah, good. So another way of looking at it is trying to find out who's going to be there. I think as you're developing your business and you're developing your networks, you go to everything because you don't know who's going to be there. You don't know that the janitor or the administrator or the person that you're there that you're talking about football or the last holiday isn't connected to or married to or friends of somebody you need to get to. Does that make sense? So when I first used to go to networking events, every single one I was invited to, guess what I did? I went because I needed to get out there. I needed to be out there. So I went to everywhere. You see him everywhere. Everywhere me go visit that boy because I would be everywhere. Does that make sense? You will get a time where are inundated. Your network and your market is built up where you say, no, I've got to be a bit more selective now. But even now, I'll go to places which got nothing to do with me thinking I'm going to get any business whatsoever. I'm not going there with any intention. And God will give me a hookup, like I told you on Sunday, in the most extreme of circumstances. I could be anywhere on the planet. Literally, I've been in different countries around the world and I get hooked up. So where do you go? Everywhere. Because you don't know who you're going to meet. You don't know who you're going to see. That's a different philosophy, isn't it? How do you generate leads then? What's a lead? What do I mean by a lead? Someone is interested in your service, your product, or something about you. So how do you generate that interest? Good. Ask questions. Anything else? Let them know what you can offer. Anything else? Hmm? Get in details, get their contacts. I'm going to tell you about get permission later on. I'm going to tell you about getting permission. Just write that down for now. Get permission. Good. Yes. So we're going to come on to that. So, um, Sister Delphine spoke about what about writing a book or giving something so that raises your profile. That's how you'll get some leads. Places to network. Tell me some ideas of business clubs or events or things. Tell me some of the places that you may network. And this is so that you all can share, so you all hear different things. Chamber of Commerce will be one. They have different events for different segments, and you just go to these events. Anywhere else? Hmm? At events? Yeah. What kind of events though? Trade events, good. Book launches, trade seminars. Where else? Property events. Any more? Charity events. Any more? Church events. Training events. Talks. Presentations. Um, You'll even go to all these webinars and see events that come as a result of them. And are these paid events? Some of them are paid. Some of them go out and say, I'm going to have to shell out some money. Others are free events. But you can make a list of as many events as possible. What I'm trying to explain to you, when you decide to network, there's so many places you can go. There's going to be an abundance of places to network. So the next bit says preparation and planning. So we're going to have to do what? Particularly those who've got young children, or you've got families, or you've got some. What are you going to have to do? You're going to have to organize yourself and say what? So in business, I've told you about the man in business. I've told you about the hands are the what? What are the hands? Production and HR. The legs are what? Sales and marketing. The heart is finance and administration. And the head is leadership. So we've got to put different functions on, don't we? We have to have the different functions of the business. So we have to decide, when am I going to do my networking? So just like you say, I've got to do my accounts. Just like you say, I've got to do my selling. Just like you say, I've got to do my marketing. Just like you say, I've got to do my administration. You've got to decide, when am I going to do my networking? Does that make sense? Put it in the diary. You may have a season in your life, and the one that missed out, Melissa, that you run one of is in terms of a networking club in the morning, breakfast clubs. Yeah. So I used to go to some breakfast clubs. I don't do it anymore because I'd rather be at the gym at 7 o'clock than be in the breakfast club now. But I used to do breakfast clubs 7 o'clock in the morning. That was on my agenda. I used to say, you know what? I didn't like getting up at that time, but I thought, you know what, I'll get it in before the beginning of the day. And I think I was in 2 breakfast clubs, one on one day and one on another day, for X amount of years. Does that make sense? So you will have to put it in your diary. You'll decide, I'm going to do this thing on a consistent basis until I've built my network. And I've put there, lastly, givers gain. Why did I say that, anybody? The more you give, the more you get, he said. But what is networking about for me when I go to these events? Even though I was going to a BNI, and they're all different types of the breakfast events. They're all different types of emphasis. Some of them are you got to give a lead. Some you've got to say you're just going to network with people. We're going to share that. But I believe that the best networkers are the one who go there to give to their network. So I look down my network to say, what can I help you with? Does that make sense? I'm not always going there to say, what can I take from the network? In fact, 99% of the time, I'm actually looking to see how I can help somebody else in the network, in the relationships, in the places that I'm going. It's a byproduct when people come back and they say they want something that I was giving. I sometimes even forget to tell them what I do. That's going to sound unconventional because I'm going to tell you about elevator pitches and how you pitch and so on. And that's what I'm saying to you, Mikey, that actually isn't sometimes about what I'm saying about me. I'm just going there to find out what you want and give you something. Isn't that crazy? But guess what happens as a result of that? You get, you get quite a lot actually. So turn over the page quickly because I want to get us onto a couple of things. So where it's got planning, I've already told that network isn't what? Selling, and it is what? Simply talking to people. Now, one of the things that I've learned over the years in business is how to decide which people I want to be in business with, or I want to have business relationship with, or I want to have any kind of a relationship with. And with time now, I've got these 4 or 5 things that have helped me. So I'm going to just share them with you very quickly so you don't have to go through the same things as me to realize that actually I don't want to be in business with you. So I know that I'm going to business with people I know, like, trust, respect. So write these down. Know, like, trust, respect. I had when I had my accounting practice, I recognized at the end when I decided to sell and move on that my co-directors, we didn't get on. And I found out over a number of years that I didn't really know them. I've been together in 5 years when we'd merged. And certain things that I saw them doing with their character, I realized I didn't really know them. One I never liked from day one anyway, if I'll be honest with you. But the other one who I thought was we were good friends, I realized from his character I didn't really like him either. He was a bit of a bully. So as I was getting towards the end of my decision of what I was going to do about my practice, I said, hey guys, I don't really know you. I don't like you. It was very quick when I realized I didn't respect them because they were 10, 15 years older than me. When I got to the practice, I found out that rather than learning from them, that I was teaching them and I was giving them insights about things. So I didn't really respect them, and I never ever trusted them. I never ever trusted them. And it took me 5 years to realize that actually I don't want to be in business with you, that I'm going to sell my part of the business and go somewhere else. But if I'd have taken some time, I could have understood what was the first one. I've got to get to know you. Then I've got to make sure then, and and you may go into business or have business relationships with people who you don't know, who you don't like, who you don't trust, who you don't respect. But I found over time, if I can't get all of them, it's not going to work. That's just what I found. Does that make sense? And I want you to decide what you will think for yourself. If you're going to go into these relationships, you'll decide, you know, I'm going to get to know this person. I want to know their values. I'm going to see if I trust them. I'm going to see if I like them. And if you see me in business with people, if they ain't tick them boxes, I ain't doing it. That's what I've learned over time. Okay? Good. So I'm moving us on because I want to quickly get to our exercise. And this is module 2 now. And at the beginning, one of the things we spoke about was being uncomfortable when you go into these events and how you talk to people and what you do. So I want us to do a few exercises to make sure we know how to talk to people, what to do in these events. Um, there's a saying which says a clever man knows everything and a wise man knows what? Everybody. There's a book called The Tipping Point, which I recommend you get. Malcolm Gladwell wrote it. He also wrote the book called Outliers. So you've heard me talk about 10,000 hours and trying to get to, in 10 years, get yourself to a place where you're an expert. But he also wrote this book called The Tipping Point. And the tipping point is what? What's a tipping point? Hmm? The edge of something that tips it into what? The next step. So you could be striving for something. You could be trying to get to the next level, and then something tips you, and then all of a sudden it just goes. They use the word viral, don't they? So you could have something that's happening, and something happens, and it tips you to the next level. So your business could be working, working, working. You're just going along, then something happens, and boom, tipping point, and you're going to the next level, next degree. And in the book, Michael Gabor talks about the 6 degrees of separation. He talks about a social scientist, Stanley Milgram, who wanted to get a package from one side of America to the other side of America. And what he did is he said to people, send it to someone who you know, then they will send it to someone else who they know so that you can get to the end destination. And what he found out was, on average, it took 6 people to get it to the destination. Does that make sense? But the most powerful thing that you'll find, though, let's say the destination was Birmingham and somebody wanted to get a package to New Jerusalem Church and they were on the other side of the world. They would say, do you know anybody in England? Yeah, yeah, I know someone in England. And they'd send it to the person in England. Does that make sense? Then the person in England would get it and they say, do you know anybody who lives in Birmingham? Yeah, yeah, I know someone who lives in Birmingham. They send it to this person in Birmingham. Do you know somebody who lives near and they want to get to New Jerusalem? Newtown. And it would just keep going like that until you get to that 6 degrees. Do you get how it works? Now, this has happened several times actually. People have wanted to get a connection and they've come to Birmingham and just said, do you know Carl George? And then they've gone from all the connections, then they ask Carl, then they get to the next point. Does that make sense? Particularly in the business community, and very specifically in the African Caribbean business community. If you want to get hot and you want to know anybody in black business, there was a time, all you had to do, just call my practice, and I would tell you anybody in the black business community in my generation. Does that make sense? So what's Gladwell said in the book about the tipping point was the amazing thing was the same person, the same individual was the person you'd get to until you got to the last stage. Does that make sense? There was one person who was the one that was the tipping point in every example that he found. There's one person who's the real connector. I did some work with someone called Jeff Cousins. Was the managing director of Jaguar Land Rover. When he was in America, like $1 billion responsibility, he brought the new Land Rover onto the market, and he had all the celebrities like David Beckham and all these people promoting the car and so on. And he was talking about how he got this to a tipping point to get people to want to get the car. And guess what he did? He had this one individual who had connections to all these high profile celebrities, and then he would just call that individual and then get them to drive the car. Does that make sense? The tipping point and the viral network that happened afterwards was from a few individuals. I'm going to give two other quick examples. Anybody watch about what we're talking about here? Somebody who is very famous came out of one industry, then went into business with some headphones. Anybody know what I'm on about? Dre, and it's called what? Beats. Did you see their network? How he marketed these beats? What did he do? All the celebrities would have it on until there was a tipping point where he didn't have to give it to celebrities anymore. He himself would see people wearing his beats everywhere. One of my colleagues, Derek Mills, who I've talked to you about before, he wrote a book called The Instant Millionaire. He worked in financial services. Most of his life was broke, and then decided one day that he's going to have different standards for himself. And within about 2 years, he got into the $1 million round table, which means you're at the top of your profession and a millionaire. But one of the things he talks about is that time when you make sure that you change your standards. But that's not what I want to talk about with Derek today. I want to talk about his son. His son's colleagues from university, when they were coming out of university, started, I don't even know the name of the company, I'll have to find out, but they make fitness gear. And all they've done on YouTube is get celebrities to endorse this fitness gear. Their business is worth hundreds of millions. Sorry, I don't know if it's under. I don't know what it might be. I don't know what it is. But literally, all they do is they've got some people to YouTube wearing their garments, and their business is literally worth millions, not hundreds of millions. They've been abroad with Anthony Robbins, with Richard Branson, all kinds of people to invest in their business because they found what? That tipping point. You get what I'm saying? So it's a good book to read and a little bit of an aside. But I want you to understand that you can be that tipping point. You can be the person who can make the connection. So let's move on to attendance then. When you go to an event and you arrive, how do you feel if it's outside of your environment? I started my accounting practice when I was 23. I was the owner of it. What do you think the average age of an accountancy practice owner was or still is? 40? Too young? 55 probably of an owner of a practice. So I'm 23, 24. I used to go to these accountancy functions on the weekend to go and mix with the other accountancy people. What do you think it looked like when I got there? Anything like me? Wrong age, wrong color, wrong everything. So I'd come through the door. Do you think I would feel very confident to be talking to these people? So I used to go, all right, let me come through the door. Okay, Carl. And then I would just go and start talking to people. And they talk to me like I'm a little kid, or talk to me what is he doing here, so on and so forth. But eventually people will get to know me and say, hey, I like this little kid. Where does he come from? And so on and so forth. And I build relationships. Does that make sense? But the reason I'm saying it, because I do know what it's like to go into an environment, I won't call it hostile, but an environment where you're uncomfortable, where you think to yourself, what am I going to do? Who am I going to talk to? What I'm going to say, I've got nothing in common. But I found lots of things in common with lots of those people. And I'm saying it to say that we can all do that. So what are your fears when you go into an environment that's not the same as you normally go? Because at that time, if I was going to a dance or a party, no matter where it was in the world, I would feel comfortable. No matter how much people's in there. because that's my environment. Does that make sense? But when I'm going to these business functions, I felt, oh gosh, what am I going to do? And I didn't have any peers going with me. I decided I'm going on my own. As a result of going on my own, why do you think that my business was going to be successful afterwards? Because I used to go where? Everywhere. I used to go everywhere. People would say, how come he got that instant success? They didn't realize all the times I used to go everywhere. Okay. So how do you feel when you go out? What are your fears? What's your biggest fear when you're going to talk to somebody? What's your biggest fear? Rejection. And what else? Intimidation. So what we've got to do is get over that. So I've been in a scenario which I'm going to share with you now. Can you come up for me, sir, and Melissa and Belinda? Good, remembered. So three of you standing here. And can you all stand together in a kind of facing this way? It's a bit hot there, so you might want to come over this side a little bit. Facing this way. And I want you all to be talking to each other in a little huddle. So you in that way, and you're in that way. And can you see how they all are having a conversation? So you're in a networking event, and you want to get to talk to those people. Yeah? Now that is telling you that you shouldn't talk to them. Can you see that? What's the clue? The back's closed. It's all what? It's all closed in and everything. That's telling you that's a closed conversation. So guess what I did? And you can stop talking now for a minute. You can listen. So guess what I did just to train myself? And in fact, is when I was going to do one of these courses, guess what I did at a networking event? I decided I'm going to talk to one of them kind of people. So I go back in there. I just came in and I went, hi guys. Even though I was the one who's being rude, guess what they did? They opened up. They were a little bit perturbed by it. Thinking, who's this guy? You can see that we got something talking about. But they still spoke to me. Does that make sense? Give them a round of applause. You can sit down. So I'm saying, if I can go to the extreme of somewhere where you're not supposed to be talking and people are going to give you respect, what you must understand is if it's open a little bit more, they're going to talk to you anyway, particularly when you're at business type events. Does that make sense? You're going to get an opportunity to develop a conversation. How you do after that, we're going to show you in a minute. But the best way to get somebody on your side, even when have you ever been at a dinner table and the person here is talking, the person there is talking, and you're here like this and no one's talking to you? Anybody ever been there? Or is it just me? And you're thinking, let me just look at my phone and pretend like I'm doing something because everyone else is talking. I'm not talking. Ever been like that? Or let me pretend I'm reading this thing here because you feel uncomfortable. I call it Betty no mate or Billy no mate in a party. You know when you're on your own and everyone's got a conversation and you're just like a Billy no mate, you're on your own. Guess who the best person to talk to is when you're in that environment? Find another Billy no mate, another Betty no mate. So you seek them out and they're on their own and they go, oh gosh, they're going to talk to me. Yes. And you go over to that person, talk, and then you actually will make them feel good. Does that make sense? Now, have any of you ever hosted a party or hosted an event and you've invited lots of people? What are you like when you host an event? You talk to everybody. What about when you see people that are on their own? What do? You grab them, you introduce them. Come here. I need you to talk to this person here. And you go, did you know such and such? Because you're the host, you feel what? You feel an obligation to try and help the other people. You know, when you go to an event, if you could put your head in that kind of mindset, you'll then start to look at it differently. Does that make sense? You're looking in the room and you're thinking, who can I help? Who can I introduce someone to? Who can I connect somebody to? Do you know anybody here? Do I know? Do you get what I'm saying? Even when you're on your own and you're the one person, you can go an event with that mindset. So last thing to do is understand about how we're going to practice that. So, can I have three different volunteers? So, one, two, three. So, again, standing here. This time they're open. So, one's there like that. And they're all talking. And I'm over here. What's the first thing I got to do to get their attention as I'm walking? Good. Make eye contact. So I go like this. Look at eye contact. And the person looks. And as soon as the eye contact is, you go like that. And they go, and you go over, you're in. Does that make sense? You're trying to get that eye contact so you can get into that environment. And when you go, the Judy moments now. So when you get that eye contact and you're in, you can start to have the conversation. My name is Carl. What's your name? And so on and so forth. Does that make sense? But you can see the difference a little bit more open. So they're actually encouraging you to come in there, and everyone's going to be quite friendly. Yeah. What if you don't get the eye contact? We still can go in. We can still can go. We can come around it, not getting the eye contact. They're not looking at things, and I would just go from here and just stand. What's going to happen? Someone's going to do it, isn't it? They're going to. It's very unlikely in a business event that people are just going to ignore. It's very unlikely. Yeah. If they're closed, I could understand them saying, "No, man, we're closed. We're talking. What's that guy doing there?" In fact, they'll tell you to move or whatever. But I wouldn't say that. But if you just go up and just slowly stand there, you might even if you're shy, you might just do this. You'll just find them call you. And I'm the weirdo kind of guy who'll go and just test this out anyway. So go to an event somewhere and just go and see some people and just go and do it. Just say, let me just try it out. Just go and stand like this. And trust me, people will draw you in. And what's your name? What's your name? Who invited you? Just try it out. Try it out and say, "Yep, Carl, I tried it. It worked." Yeah. And as you get more bold, you look for the eye contact. But the best person you want, this is the one I want to show you. You two talk to each other now, a bit closed. No, I want you two to talk actually, because kinds are just difficult. And then you be a billionaire, mate. You're just looking around. Can you see how he feels? So look what I'm going to do now. So I'm over here. Them two are just talking. I go. You know how good this person feels now? Because them two was having their big conversation, and this was a Billy No mate just standing on their own. That's the best person to target. Does that make sense? Then you get into a conversation. Now, last thing, we're in a conversation. This person here is not interested in me whatsoever. In fact, they're interested in such and such over the room. I don't know, Bill Gates just walked in, and all they know is they just want to talk to Bill Gates. So as I come over here, what's this person doing? So I'm talking, I'm going, "Hey, my name's Carl." And then he says, "Yeah." And this person's going, "Yeah, yeah, my name's Tashan." And he's looking all around. Have you ever had that experience where they're not paying you any attention whatsoever? They're not even listening to you when you talk to them and so on. So what we're going to do is try and find out how we move or park this person somewhere else. Okay? So the first thing I want you to do is just get into some threes very quickly. So get into some threes. We're going to do a few little exercises. Threes. So in your threes, I want one person to be the person who just talks all about themselves, no matter what the other people are talking about. I want them to just go over the top and just talk about themselves. So no matter what the conversation is, tell them about their business, how well they've done, where they're going, and so on and so forth. And I want the other two to just see how it feels as they're trying to get their conversation in. Okay? So I want one person to do all the big things that they've done in life and just talking about how good they are, how well their business is doing. The one of you just choose, and then the other two. So the other two are just trying to get their conversation in and trying to open it up a little bit, but this person's just continually taking over the conversation. Okay, stop. And another person have a go very quickly, being the big I am. So there's another person in the group just talking about yourself. Okay, last one. Can the third person have a go quickly? Last one. Can the third person have a go? Just talk all about yourself, how great you are. Right, stop, 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 stop. Now, stay in your groups. How did that feel for for the other two? How did that feel? Uncomfortable, awkward, annoying, anything else? Laughing. You find you're asking them more? Is it? Now, how did it feel for the person doing it? How did it feel for the person when you were being the big I am? And how did that feel for you? Right. So stop a minute. Stop a minute. What we want to understand is it's not good for the other people when all you do is talk about yourself, or talk about what you're doing, talking about how great you are, and so on and so forth. And and if you've done lots of things, I have this challenge sometimes. Every time someone's talking about something, when I meet new people, I've normally got some example of connected with someone, met somebody, or I was at our graduation at football last week. I got off the plane from Lebanon that morning and I was talking to someone from one of the football things, and I literally was just saying, I just got off the plane from Lebanon, and I just was with such and such, and he went, oh, yes, Carl, yes, Carl. And I wasn't showing off or nothing. I literally had. I'd have to remind myself sometimes. I just don't say it. Does that make sense? I remind myself that's somebody's. That's not their normal life. It's not their normal business experience. So just don't say nothing. So they say, I say, no, no, oh, I don't say nothing. I don't say, I've just got off a plane, or I just calm it down. Does that make sense? Because people don't want to hear it. You might think they do, they're not your cheerleaders. They want to know how great you are. In fact, what's the greatest word in the English language? Their name. The greatest name in the English language is the other person's name. If somebody comes out of a conversation and they've spoken all of the time, guess what they will say afterwards? They said that was a great that guy is a great conversationalist. Guess why? They were talking all of the time. So not like 60 questions, but what your goal is in that networking relationship is to do what? Make them talk and ask them questions. And I remember I said about getting permission. I get permission. I don't give out business cards. In fact, I only got my business card after 20 years in business, or 25 years in this business, very recently, because I was in the Middle East and they have a tradition of giving them out like this. As soon as they meet you, everybody gives out their business card. And a guy came over to me and he gave me his business card and then he stood there like that. And I went, I haven't got one. And he was offended. He was looking at me like he was going to taunt me. And I was going, no, no, seriously, I haven't got any business cards. And after that experience, I said, Carl, you better go and print some business cards for when you go back to Dubai again. Does that make sense? But over 20 odd years, I've never had a business card. Why? I don't need, I get your business card and I ask for permission and I actually write on the back of your business card in front of you sometimes. I'm writing it, this is why I met such and such. Da, 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 da. And when they leave, I'll write down a few little things about how many kids they got or what birthday or whatever it is. I put it on the card straight away and I get their permission to be in contact with them. Does that make sense? And I'm finding out all about them. That's what I'm trying to do. So I'm talking, and for a couple of reasons why I don't want to talk about me, because I don't want them to feel who does he think he is, and so on and so forth. Does that make sense? And it's better that someone else tells them about you. It's better that someone else goes, do you know who you were just talking to? Or do you know what connections that person's got? And then they feel even better because they say, whoa, I was with him for 2 hours. He never said once that he was the boss, or he never said once that he was this or she was that. Does that make sense? So the last thing I want you to do now, just to show the difference, I want you to just talk in your group and just ask each other questions about yourselves, generally about your business, what you do, and so on, and just see who can find out the most about the people you're in your group with. Go for it. Find out something different. Okay, three things not to do in those conversations. What are the three things not to do? This is in communication generally. Hmm? Someone said that interrupt. We're going to write these down in a minute. Don't interrupt, let people speak. What else? Give eye contact. So, what not to do then? Looking away and look fidgety and looking around like you're not interested. But what about those long winded conversations? Don't be the person who's just talk. You don't get anybody else a chance to talk because you don't give them no brain. You're talking, and they can't get in and so on and so forth. Don't be that person. Okay, say your little bit. Give a snippet. give, give a snippet, and then let another person talk. Does that make sense? And sometimes you're not aware you're doing it because that's the way you are, but you've got to make sure. Those are two or three things. And the third one is talking about yourself. Okay? Now, what if you do get that rude person, or if you do get that person who is not interested in you, or you don't want to talk to them? How do you get rid of them? You know, somebody, you was a Billy No mate, and someone found you and they're not letting you go. What do you do there? Huh? You got a phone call you need to make? Anything else? Yeah, you find someone else and you say, "Can I introduce you to someone?" And you part them with that other person. Huh? Anything else? Go to the toilet, to the food. I'm going to get some food. Do you want to get some food as well? Come on, let's go and get some food. And you lose them at the food. You lose them at the food. Does that make sense? And have you ever been, now that I've told you, have anybody ever parked you as you're thinking about it? So, last thing I want you to do, and then we can have a sit down because we've got to finish off for today. So, I want you to learn the worst things to do is interrupt, be insincere, not listening, looking around, give long winded speeches, talking about yourself. I didn't want you to do that. But what do I want you to do to make sure that you are interested in the conversation, not just talking to people, but you want to find out about business, don't you? You want to get that business, don't you? Say to your neighbor, no, it's not about that. Just tell your people in your group, it's not about that. The worst thing to do, unfortunately, even though you're going there for business, is to talk about what? It's strange, isn't it? You've got to go there and do the small talk. If you go there and do the business talk, you're probably not going to get a chance. But if you go and do the small talk, then you're going to have an ability to get to know people, find a connection, and then later on, sometime down the road, when you got no like, trust, respect, blah, 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 then you might get some business. So imagine someone comes to me, they could have been the greatest business person. I don't know them from Adam. They start talking to me about business. What am I thinking? Me know you? Do I like you? I don't know you. Do I trust? I've got to get all of that first, haven't I? So what you've got to do is think, forget the business. Let me just get to know this person. Let me show them what I'm like. In fact, let me see if we can get some rapport. So what I want you to do now, just talk to people, to just do the small talk. What can you do small talk about? Go for it for 2 minutes. Small talk. Right, can you take your seats? Take your seats very quickly. Right, some clues. I knew we'd only get through probably one module. We'll have to plan another session to take you through the rest of party and how we get ourselves a bit of a plan. But if you turn to page 8, we were on, where we're about arriving and making that first move, remembering names. We won't talk about memory today and departures. If we go on to work in the room, it talks about creating attention, grabbing introduction. Talk about what you do and not who you are. What do I mean by that? People say, "What do you do, Carl?" I'm an accountant, and then they go, "Okay, let me go about my business." So what do? You talk about what you can do for them. Yeah, you talk about how you make a difference. You talk about what you do to improve their lives. Talk about, find those kinds of things to make it interesting. Ask them about how's business, but the main thing is small talk. What was some of the things that you can talk about? I'm heavily into football again. There's a period where I never used to watch football, and the main reason why I'm watching football again wasn't anything to do with liking football. Guess what it was? Wasn't even my son. Nothing. He wasn't playing football when I started back. It was just have a talking point. 'Cause I don't watch all the soaps and things. So when people are talking about them soaps and things, I don't know what they're talking about. So I can't get in the conversation. When all them things, Kardashian, this and blah, blah, that, whatever the equivalent was back in the day, I just couldn't involve myself in the conversation. And I didn't want to be talking current affairs all the time. Does that make sense? It seem a bit boring that all I can talk about is Brexit or whatever. So I had to find something that was interesting. In fact, I used to get them social magazines type things and read about them so I could know what the gossip was. So at least I could have some conversation. So the one thing that I did, I said, I'm going to go football. That's one of the biggest things that people know about. I'm going to learn about football. And then I got back into football again. Does that make sense? So football was one for me. And sport generally is one good for small talk. Another one that's good for me is restaurants, and I love food. So I could talk about food and restaurants and them kind of things, and people like talk about that. And holidays. Everybody knows about Jamaica. No matter which culture you're from, I can tell you stories about Jamaica. Does that make sense? I can be the life at the party with my stories about Jamaica. And guess what? On a one-to-one basis, I'm quite reserved and quiet. But when I go out to these networking events, guess what I put on? The other Carl. It's not that I'm not being me, but I know that I have to have this different persona. So I've got 3 or 4 stories, and I rinsed them out for the last 20 years. Serious? It might go up to 5, 6, 7, but I'm telling you, I've got my Jamaica this story, I got my Ochi story, I got my blah blah story. So whether I'm around the dinner table or I'm around in the little group or something happens, I can pull out the story. Everybody laughs. That guy's really good, man. He's funny. Do you get what I'm saying? Some people naturally are like that and are able to do it. But if you're not naturally like that, you just have to get your story, home it to perfection. Don't make it up. Sorry, don't make it up. And don't teeth other people's story. Just find your own ones that happen and are funny. And then you have those things. And then it gets you into your Jamaica story, your holiday story, or your children's story. People like to talk about their children. You start someone off on their children and you almost yawn and you're, oh gosh, man. But you ask them and you show something, and say, yeah, my son this or my daughter done that, and so on and so forth. Does that make sense? That small talk is the thing that will make the connection. So hopefully you've seen that actually these business functions, it isn't about, oh, I've got to learn about my business, I've got to do that. No, you've got to go there and make relationship. And it's the same with any form of evangelism. It's the same with anything like that. You've got to go and build relationship with people, and by building relationship then you can get that connection and then other things can come from it. But if you go straight for the kill, you're not going to get there. Yeah. Communication, the 2-to-1 rule. What's the 2-to-1 rule? Let the other person do the talking. Yeah, let the other person do the talking. You got 2 ears, 1 mouth. Use it in that proportion. We're not going to cover elevator pitch today, but you all have heard of an elevator pitch, I presume, which is you're stuck in an elevator, you've got to tell someone about your business, and you've only got the time from the top floor down to the bottom floor to get your point across. So you've got to have it honed. Tell them what you do, not who you are, and what you can do for them. So that's another thing. You've got to step outside your comfort zone. And some of the common crutches, and I've literally got 2 minutes. Some of the common crutches when you go out. What's the worst one that I said you shouldn't do when you go out? Stick with the person you went with. When you get there, say, see ya. See you at the end. Let's see who you can meet and so on and so forth. What else is a common crutch? Talking about yourself. Anything else? Common crutch. What don't you do around the food and the drink table? What don't you do? You don't get drunk. You don't be drinking and all over guzzling down the food and so on, like you never seen food before. Anything? Any other crutches? Don't arrive late. What's the opposite of late? Have you ever been putting on an event and people come before the time and you're not ready? How does that make you feel? You think you've done well. They're thinking, why you come so early for? I got this to do, I got that to do. So don't come too early. And if you're early, I'd believe in getting to places early, but just stay. Stay in your car, catch up on things, and then go in at the appropriate time. Does that make sense? Don't stick to one person. What do you do with your mobile phone? Yeah, put on silent. You know, it shouldn't be there on your phone. And don't misabuse your body system, the person that you go with. Okay? So, I want to finish there and we will do another session. But I want to just remind you of it's not what you know, but who you know. But it's not who you know, but who knows you. So, you've got to know people. So, you've got to build up a network of people and you've got to give to that network. Then you've got to make sure people know you. So I want to show you next time how to build your profile, build your networks, and build your credibility. So there's some strategic things we can do. It's not what you know, not who you know, but it's who knows you. And then it's what they're saying about you. It's not who knows you, but it's what they're saying about you. Because plenty of people can know you, but they're not saying the right things about you. So we've got to make sure they're saying the right things about us. Does that make sense? So the brand and the credibility all ties up. So in our strategy, we're going to have a strategy which I want you to think about as homework. I want you to think about who do you know? Who do you need to know? Who are those 6 degrees of separation? That's your first bit of homework. And trust me, you can get to anybody. When I went into corporate governance, the person who wrote the governance code for the whole world was Sir Adrian Cadbury. So guess who endorsed my framework? Sir Adrian Cadbury. It was on my mind, this is who I'm going to get. Does that make sense? I didn't look for the person I looked for the person in the world that I wanted. And I got that in 2 degrees of separation. The guy, Steve Walker, Aston Reinvestment Trust is literally around the corner from here. Is where we got some of the funding when we first bought this church. And Sir Adrian Cadbury used to sit on a board that Steve Walker sat on. That's how I got to Adrian Cadbury. 2 degrees it took me. So I wanted to build that network. The second thing I said is it's not what you know, it's who you know. And then I said it's who knows you. So I want you to think about how you can get people to know you before we meet next time. Because when we meet next time, I'm going to show you how you can raise your profile and take it off the scale so that people know you everywhere. Then the third thing I want you to talk about, just 3 bits of homework, is what they're saying about you. But what I want you to tell me is what you want them to be saying about you. Does that make sense? I don't care what they're saying about you yet. I want you to write down what do I want people to say about me. The last 10 years I've been doing what? Anybody know? What line of business? Governance. What do I want people to say about me? If you know anything you want to know about governance, this is who you need to call the governor. That's what I want them to say about me. I've known that for 10, 15 years. And guess what people say about me? If you want to know about governance, you need to go to Carl George. That's it. So I want you to know what you want people to say about you. I want you to know it. I want you to write it down and be articulate about it. Those are the 3 bits of homework. Everybody got that? So number 2 is, so one is which people you want. The second one is how you're going to raise your profile so that people know you. And then the third one is what they're saying about you. So 3 bits of homework. So we're going to conclude there. Has that been useful for you about getting and raising your networks. I believe that the most important indicator of my success in business has not been my ability to do business. It's not been what I know how to do as a governor. It's not been what the bank is not been my counters. It's nothing like it's been my connections. I believe that's been the most important thing. And whenever I've done anything, it's been my networks and my connections that's been able me to do what I need to do. I think this skill here and this thing that we're learning here is the most powerful thing that you can have. Whether it's in business, in your career, or anything, it's this what you know, who knows you, what they're saying about you. That's it. That's the end game. Everything else will fall underneath that. Okay, we will conclude there unless there's any very quick questions. Excellent. We want to thank those of you from New Jerusalem. We are on a series at the moment on a Sunday talking about Joseph, and then on a Tuesday doing some business principles. So what we're going to do now is just to take our offering. So don't feel obligated if you haven't wasn't prepared for that. But for the members, we take our offering now, and we're just going to have a closing prayer, and then we're finished for tonight. Okay? And you will have been welcomed by some of the New J members in your groups as you've been speaking. Keep your workbooks because we're going to use them again.